President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in the US ahead of his last-ditch effort to convince US lawmakers to continue aid for Ukraine. Zelensky arrived in Washington late Monday to meet with top US lawmakers, the head of the International Monetary Fund, and the US President Joe Biden during his visit. As Zelensky started his critical visit to Washington to shore up security assistance, he met with International Monetary Fund Chief Kristalina Georgieva. The fund's executive board approved a $900 million disbursement for Ukraine from its $15.6 billion loan programme. The IMF chief met Zelensky for nearly an hour at the IMF headquarters in Washington. She also told him that the IMF's executive board was unanimous in its support for Ukraine.
Thank you very much.
We are thankful to IMF, Kristalina, that I heard now and see it that you will support us financially. It's very important during this challenging period. That's why it means that Ukraine is strong and not alone. Thank you so much.
Before meeting the IMF chief, the Ukrainian president also addressed a US military audience. In the address, Zelensky said he hoped he could still count on the US, whilst also urging Congress to not play into the Russian President Vladimir Putin's hands.
The whole world is watching us, observing what destiny other free nation could face to live freely or to be subjugated. Ukrainians haven't given up and won't give up. We know what to do, and you can count on Ukraine, and we hope just as much to be able to count on you.
The statement made by the Ukrainian president comes as he's scheduled to meet US President Joe Biden and top congressional officials today. Zelensky seeks to shore up support for continued US security help for Kyiv's fight against Russia's invasion. Many Republican lawmakers have questioned continued aid to Ukraine, but US President Joe Biden's administration has warned Congress that a failure to renew military assistance to Ukraine could tip the war in Russia's favour, creating national security threats for the West. Biden's Democratic allies in Congress are trying to win approval of about $50 billion in new security assistance for Ukraine. But lawmakers are scheduled to go into recess for the year by Friday. Well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tirani sent us this report from New York.
It seems Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is faced with an impossible task to convince lawmakers on Capitol Hill that more aid to Ukraine is needed, notably before Christmas break when Republicans leave Washington. The fate of billions of dollars in assistance to Ukraine remains in limbo, even as Volodymyr Zelensky pleaded on Monday at a university that Ukraine hasn't given up and called on the United States to stand by its side. Zelensky, however, is unlikely to change the dynamics in Washington, with Republicans, even those who support more military aid to Ukraine, would budge from making a deal on border security with the Democrats before agreeing to this aid. It's a complicated moment, even for the White House, as U.S. President Joe Biden wants to provide this aid, but on the other hand, his hands seemed to be tied. And as I mentioned earlier, it's very unlikely that any budget will be approved, whether regarding foreign aid to Ukraine or elsewhere, or even on border security before the end of the year. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.